Manager is a hot topic. It's one of those tools that comes basic with every package, and a lot of people are either underutilizing it or just not utilizing it at all and just don't fully understand what you can do in Zone Manager. So we'll run through kind of what Zone Manager is and why it's important to our demonstration, our workflows. So we'll go through a workflow here using some data from XSection, Prism, Wellbase, and then putting it into a map in GeoAtlas and taking data out of GeoAtlas and putting it back into Zone Manager. So we'll take a look at some of that. Then we'll go through the conclusions and some next steps. So real quick, I'm just going to go through what is Zone Manager exactly. Zone Manager is provides storage, display, and analysis of well data that you typically wouldn't be able to put into Wellbase somewhere, namely with petrophysical data or any other type of user data that you might be using somewhere externally or in other softwares, and you can't find a place to put that into your Wellbase database. Zone Manager is a very good place to put that. So it expands the Wellbase database with defined attributes. These are all user-defined. You give it a name, you give it other type of information, and then just put data into the database there, and it ties it to the well. Then these attributes can be mapped and analyzed in other modules of GeoGraphix, and it includes an analysis tools like an attribute calculator and crossplots. So during the demonstration, we want to ask you guys a question. When using Zone Manager, what are some of the top issues you're running into? So I have a couple A, B, C, or D options here. Select A, bringing data into Zone Manager through imports, bringing it in from other modules. You're having some issues where data might not be showing up or it's not coming in correctly. Select the B if the analysis within Zone Manager, for instance, any kind of calculations you might be doing in there or utilizing that data, you might have some issues with that. Select C if you have some issues getting data out of Zone Manager, posting in a map or taking it out into a spreadsheet or in a notepad document that you can then spread around for other people to look at. And then D for any kind of other options, and then let us know what the issues you might have with it are. And then we'll aggregate the feedback and share at the end of the session. So the workflow we're going to be going through here, so we'll start looking in Zone Manager and importing data, like I said, from XSection, from Prism, from Wellbase, and then from a spreadsheet, and putting that all into the Zone Manager worksheet, transferring the petrophysical data. And then we'll take that information from Zone Manager and build an Isomap from it, and we'll enhance the map with some additional data types. So we'll get on with the demonstration here. So I've got a Zone Manager open here now. When you first import data into your project, you have a zone automatically created for you called the well zone. The well zone is defined just as basically the top of the well down to the bottom of the well, expanding that entire distance. So any calculations I run is going to calculate the entire length of the well. When I've first opened my zone here, I get all the wells in my project. I have about 21 in here. You'll see I have a couple attributes in here already created. This is my well, operator, XY, MD, top MD, base MD, TVD, and TVD sub C. These are all going to be populated from information in Wellbase, and these are our default attributes. When running any kind of calculations, putting data into Zone Manager, the XYs and MDs and TVDs will need to be calculated first. And again, these are coming from the information table in Wellbase. So to do that, we'll come over here and we'll do a calculate zone XYZ data. And now you see, based on my interval data as I've set here for the zone, I'm going to get some XY position data. I'll get my measured depth for my wells, top MD starting at the top of the well, base MD going down to in this case, to the bottom of the well, and then some TVD and TVD sub C values. Now I'm going to switch zones here. I'm going to use another zone that we're going to use for the demonstration here called the F11 zone. This one's a little bit different in that I've set an interval on this zone. I'm going to take a look at that. This one is defined as the stratigraphic top of my F11 and then my F11 base. And it's basically going to define any attribute data going from the top of the zone down to the bottom of the zone. So I'll go ahead and click OK. So now you can see I have some different XY data here. The MD values are based on the top MD and base MD of my F11 formation top, all coming out of well base. In this case, it's defined here as the top pick of my F11 is at 6420. The base pick, in this case, I don't have an F11 base for this pick for this well. I have about 5 wells or 6 wells in here that don't have that pick, but the other values are being calculated from those wells. So now we'll look at bringing data into my spreadsheet here. We'll start with the X section. So I have a cross section open here with most of my wells in it, and I've defined my zone. You can see here from the red formation tops, the F11 top and the F11 base. There's my F11 base. Now I'm running any kind of calculations I run from here. When I save the information, it's only going to calculate whatever is between these two tops. Anything that extends outside of it will not be calculated. So in this case, I've picked an interval here called net sand, and I'm using some of my vector data in a Prism template to display here in the cross section. So now I can kind of go across and see my net thickness is picked on these intervals. First well here is about 27 feet. And I picked them across within that zone, and the one over here outside the zone as well to show you how the calculation's handled there. And then a few wells at the end that are have 0 markers where there's no net sand. So now once I've made the picks for my intervals here in the cross section, I'll save that interval data and I can send that on over to Zone Manager. And I have a couple options in here. First option here, I can select the zones to sum and save to Zone Manager. And when I do that for the first time, I'll need to tell it which zone and which attribute to save to. And then any subsequent time I save the information, I don't have to go through the options of selecting it every time. I can use the previously selected options, and then when I click Save, it goes right away. So I'm going to select the zones, click Save. So here's my net sand interval. I'm going to save it to my F11 zone. I'm going to save my measured depth values. Now you can choose to save these intervals to multiple zones. You can choose both MD and TBD at the same time. But in this case, we're just going to do MD. Hit Next, and I don't have any pay in here, so I should finish. And that'll run through the calculations. And now when I open up Zone Manager, you'll see I have a net sand column now with all my values calculated for those wells that were in the cross section. And we'll look at the well that I had defined with the interval here. This one's 26 feet, and again, it's crossing over that zone. But my zone is defined F11 base, so it's only going to calculate this section of the interval here. Now this is well number 16. So when I look at that in Zone Manager, you can see it's only calculated the net sand thickness of 14 feet instead of the 26 feet that I had picked. So that's the interval data. The interval data, again, is all picked in X section and then brought over here to Zone Manager, saving the interval picks after you make them. But you don't have to pick them in the cross-section and save, then go to open up another cross-section, pick them again, and save it again. We do have the tool available here on the Zone Manager side. So go in here to Tools, Compute Interval Data, and then choose your interval, and then calculate the zone and the values there again, and calculate the same way. And instead of, that one's going to calculate all wells in my project that have a net sand interval pick, not just the ones that are in that current cross-section. So you don't have to have multiple cross-sections open and do this multiple times. You can do it once right away here in Zone Manager. So now I'm going to go ahead and close out of my X section here. So that's taking interval data out of my cross-section. I'm going to switch on over to Prism. And here in Prism, I'm going to do some petrophysical calculations. I'm using the Archie interpretation set for my UDE, and I'm calculating some porosity curves and some water saturation curves. I'm going to run the curve data statistics on my phi curve and I'm going to calculate it and save that data into Zone Manager, and then we'll look at some reservoir pay zones. So I'm going to go over here to the interpretation and do curve data statistics. And when I get that selected here, I'm going to choose the curve I want to calculate. I'm going to choose my VE. Choose the statistic I want to calculate. I'm just going to average these values. And I'm going to choose my depth interval. And I'm going to use the same interval that I'm using in Zone Manager, so F11. F11 base automatically populates here. And then choose my Zone Manager zone, the F11 zone. And I'm going to choose to calculate my measured depth values, and I'll add that parameter. Now I can do this with multiple parameters. Once you've set all this up, click Add, and then move on to another curve and calculate that one as well. Then when I click Create Data, it'll give me a list of all the values that are calculated across these curves. You can see some of these are null values. Not every well that I have in here has these curves, so I'm going to get some nulls in a few places. And you can see the list of all my values here. So I can choose to save this to Zone Manager. When I do that, I'm going to select the parameters. Like I said, you can just do multiple parameters at a time here. I'm going to take my VE average across my F11, choose the zone, and then choose the attribute. On my drop-down box, I only have net sand available now, so I need to create a new one. And I'll call this VE average. And I'll save the zone attribute names, and I'll save them to Zone Manager. So now I come over here to Zone Manager, I'll see my VE average values have been calculated for those wells. I didn't bring any null values over during that calculation process, but there is a checkbox available should you choose to calculate the nulls as well. So that's the curve data statistics and bringing over curve data that way. Now I'm going to run some reservoir statistics and calculations. So I'll click Close here. I'm going to go back up here to Interpretation and Reservoir Pay Summations. I'm going to be calculating here on my water saturation, my VE, and my V-shale curves. Choose the zone that I want to calculate to. And then the attributes that I want to calculate is my gross int, my gross res, my net res, and my net pay, all in the measured depth values. And again, I can say multiple ones, TVD, TVT, and TST, true vertical thickness and true stratigraphic thickness. And then run that calculation based on these curves and send those on over to Zone Manager as well. So I'll run my computation, get a list of all my values, and again, some of these are going to have some zeros or nulls because they don't have the proper curves. And I can choose to save those null values, and I got the F11 zone selected up here, so I can save them over to Zone Manager. And there's my attributes, gross int, gross res, and net pay, all calculated out of Prism. So I've calculated a couple different attributes here out of the back section, out of Prism. Next one I'm going to look at is calculating some production data out of Wellbase. Namely, this is going to be some production data. So we'll come up here to Tools. We have a tool in here called the Compute Production Data. What that does is it goes to the production table in Wellbase, calculates either oil or gas or water, and then calculates either a cumulative, an EUR, or reserve, first month, last month, anything that you have calculated in that table. So I'm going to choose that and then choose the zone that is the producing zone here. In this case, I have the F11 production zone. Choose my fluid type. I'm going to choose to do gas. And I'm going to calculate a cumulative gas value. And then it's going to ask me to save it to the zone and the zone attribute, so I'll do my F11 zone. Zone attribute, again, don't have a cum gas in here yet, so I'll have to create a new one. So I call this cum gas. And then click OK. So now cum gas is going to be available here in the drop-down box. And then click OK. So now I've got cum gas values calculated out of the well-based production table. I can go on over here and look at production and see here's my cum values for a couple of my wells. Again, not every well is going to have any production in it, so some of these are going to be blank. So that's taking some production values out of WellBase and putting it in here into Zone Manager. And now I've got a couple different attributes in here. I can do some calculations on them. So we have a tool in here for that. Go up here to Tools and Attribute Calculator. I can set up some user-defined calculations based on other attributes that I've calculated so far. So I can take my fee average, my gross int, gross res, net pay, net sand, cum gas, any of these attributes and any other attributes I may put in here, and calculate some other information out of them. If you go over here to the equation editor, you can see a list of all the equations that we have available here. Got some drainage radius calculations, gas volumes, gas drainage, oil drainage, oil volumes, SO fees. These are just water saturation. These are some of the basic attributes that we can make. You can see the calculations over here. So these are some of the ones that you can just use and put values into to calculate from them, or just create your own. So we're going to do a simple one here. We're going to take our cum gas calculation, which is in MCF, and we're going to calculate it to BCF. So I'm going to take my attribute here. I'll just say A divided by 1 million here, 2, 6. And when I parse the equation, it's going to ask me, based on the variable you've put into your equation, what do you want that attribute to be? What are you calculating on? So I'm going to choose my cum gas from the drop-down menu here. I can evaluate the equation and see what my values are ranging from. So out of my 21 wells, 9 of them are nulls, getting a minimum of 0.01 and a maximum of 2.84. Now I can save these values to Zone Manager. Again, choosing the zone to save to, and then the attribute. If I want to create a new attribute from here, I can. So I'll do new, say this is cum gas, BCF. Make sure that's in the drop-down box here, and click OK. And I've calculated my cum gas attribute and created a cum gas BCF. So now that I've got some of these values here calculating from other modules, sometimes you're going to have data that you're working on outside of GeoGraphix somewhere, just some internal data, something maybe you're working in another software with, and you have all that data sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere. We can import those values into Zone Manager here, no problem. So come up here to File, Import. We'll do an ASCII import. Spreadsheets will need to be saved as comma delimited files, or CSVs. The import process here reads tab delimited, space delimited, and comma delimited. So I'll click here to browse for the file, and it's saved in my project folder. So program data, GeoGraphix, projects, Gulf Coast, there it is. So this is a spreadsheet of subsea values that I've created. In this spreadsheet, I have the well ID, F11 for the name of the top, the subsea values, the well name, the well number, and the well ID. Again, at the end here. Now, when I'm importing my spreadsheet, I don't have to import every single column. I can pick and choose which ones to bring in. So I'll highlight my first row of data here. You see I've got the correct delimiter here set to comma, so it's reading this correctly. Each value gets its own row. So I have the top one. This is going to be my well ID. Second one, my form alias. I'm not bringing that into my Zone Manager spreadsheet here, so I can skip over it. And I can go down here to the third attribute here, and this is going to be my subsea. Again, it's not in my drop-down box, so I create a new attribute. Call this subsea F11. And I'll select that here in the drop-down box. And I'm not going to bring anything else in from this import. The well name, well number, I already have well ID already coming across in the formation top. aren't going to be included, so all I have to do is just not map them out. And it's only going to import the well ID and the subsea values. So I click import, and there's my new attribute, subsea F11. So with the spreadsheet, you'll just have to have a column for your well ID tying these values to the correct well, and then when you import, you just map them to the correct column. So with some of these values in my spreadsheet now, I can take this data and I can use it in GeoAtlas to create maps out of. So I'm going to create a layer for my phi average. Go to layer. I'll create an Isomap layer. Choose my zone, my F11. Choose the attribute I want to calculate on. We're going to do phi. Give the layer a name here, my phi average. And you can filter it down to a select number of wells as well. In this case, we're doing it across all of them. And then click OK. And then we'll get to the Isomap build surface options here. I'm going to apply a color fill. Set a spectrum here to pastel. And I'm going to set my contour interval to something that'll look a little bit nicer. That'll work. And then I'll click Finish to create the layer. So I'm going over here to GeoAtlas. Right now I just got a layer here with my well spots. I'll go to select that layer I've created now, my phi average. And I can see a nice Isomap made out of those using the Zone Manager data points as a source. So you can see all my data points here tied to the wells coming from Zone Manager and creating this map. So you can build maps out of zone data from our Zone Manager spreadsheet. You can also take data out of maps and put them into the Zone Manager spreadsheet. So I'm going to turn this layer off, and let's turn this one on. This is a F11 isocore, just calculating a isocore thickness from my F11 top and my F11 base. I'm going to take these values and I'm going to put them over into Zone Manager. So in Zone Manager, I have another import option. I'm going to File, Import. At this top option here, Isomap import. So in there it's going to ask me which layer do you want to import from, and choose my F11 isocore. Take my zone name, F11 zone, create a new attribute, again because I don't have one for this yet, just call this isocore F11. Choose that from the drop down here. And again, I can apply a filter. In this case, I'm going to keep it to all wells, and then click OK. And that'll calculate my isocore values from the map and tie them to my wells here in Zone Manager. So there's a couple of ways I can get data into Zone Manager and utilize it in making a map. Also within GeoAtlas, I can use that data to post on a well. So I'm going to go here to my well spots. Oops, just going to have that in the correct AOI. So let's do this real quick, create a new one. So I can go down here to zones and go to attributes and click and drag and add them to my map here. It's going to ask me which zone do you want to pull data from, which attribute. Let's do the phi average. And this is just going to post a value. When I add these attributes over here, I can choose to append the attribute name to the data post, so it puts next to the value, it puts you next to that the name of the attribute that it's calculating from as well. And then if I ever want to run any calculations with bubble symbols or thematics, I can do that as well by adding it to the map tip bin. So we'll come down here, we can add, say my net sand. And let's do another one for, let's say my cum gas BCF. Get the layer name here. So I can see on my map I'm posting these Zone Manager values at the bottom of the well symbol. And I can use those well postings to create a bubble symbol map on this layer. So I'll check on bubble symbols. In the field drop-down, I can select my attribute values. Do a QGAS BCF here. And I'm going to change my colors to light blue to dark blue. Now I can see some big producers on my map here based on these bubble symbols. Again, pulling all this data out of Zone Manager, like you would well-based data typically as well. So when you're looking at your data here in Zone Manager and you want to send this data out to somebody else, who can export the results out. And send that out to a text document. And I can go back here and open that up and look at my my attribute values. So I can send these values out to any other users that might be looking at some values in there. Coming new in GeoGraphix 2015, we're looking to add the ability to add zones to the 3D view. So posting this type of data on a wellbore in the 3D view, we'll be able to look at attribute names, attribute values, and create these production bubble and pie charts based on the Zone Manager attribute values, like you would typically see with any kind of core DST IP data on your wellbores in 3D view. Now we're going to do the same with Zone Manager data, and then use a histogram to adjust those colors as we see fit. So we're going to go ahead and run through the conclusions here. Zone Managers, we see a very powerful tool. You can store a lot of data in there that you wouldn't really find anywhere else. It's included in every GeoGraphix package. It comes basic as a data manager like you would see with Wellbase and Query Builder. You can use this for any project, any type of data you're trying to use here. It's quick and easy to use, bringing data in, bringing data out, moving it around from one module to the other. It's pretty flexible, enables attributes to be applied which are not supported in Wellbase. So if you're trying to find a place to put this data in Wellbase, can't find it, Zone Manager will help you out with that. And we got some nice output options there for you.